Shalom, shalom, shalom again. It's your brother Ezra ben Khazar, the Hebrew. Once again, I want to come and talk about our favorite people group over here, the Khazars. Ancient kingdoms, semi-nomadic, Turkic-speaking warriors, religious scholars, overall epic people when we look at them. As you see by this map here, the territory that they would have encompassed is incredible. The borders in the 8th century, which is when you start off in the 700s going into the 800s, that's what the 8th century is. You see the limits of the Kyivan Rus, so this is a little bit later. That would be in the 10th century. So today we want to talk about what are or who are the Khazars. I want to take you to encyclopedia of Ukraine.com and take you to the section about Khazar. It says they are a semi-nomadic Turkic-speaking people that appear in southeastern Europe after the expulsion of the Huns in the 4th century and lived in the area until the 11th century. They were the eastern neighbors of the eastern Slavic tribes and then of the Kyivan Rus. There are various hypotheses on the origin of the Khazars. They consider themselves close to the Volga Bulgars, Oghuz, and Avars. The territory first settled by them encompassed the Caspian steppes between the Sulak River and the lower Don River. At first, the Khazars were nomads and herders, but eventually some of them turned to farming and especially trade. I would love to talk about that thing with the Huns, but maybe I'll make another video on it. But there's a whole story about the empire that the Khazars would have came out of, which is called the Turk Empire, the Western region, which will be translated as either the Sky Turks, or it can also be translated as the Root Turks, as in the root of the Turkic culture. Because Turkic is more of a culture than a lineage. But the ruling class of that clan would be the Xiongnu, or a part of the Xiongnu. The ruling class of the Gokturk would have been the servants of the people that we would know as the Huns, from what I've seen. And they rose up and created the Gokturk. The lower class rose up. This would be the Ashina caste. You can see that in my History of the Khazars playlist. You'll see that caste. But this caste, I would believe, goes out to be the ruling lineage, not only amongst Khazars, but also amongst other Turkic peoples, such as the people who are going to be the Hungarians. But let's continue. I want to go on to the second paragraph. From the second half of the 6th century, the Khazars were ruled by the Western Turkic Khaganate. And after the dissolution of the Khaganate in the middle of the 7th century, the Khazars conquered some of the Bulgar and other Caucasian, like Alan, and Slavic tribes and established the Khazar Khaganate, the first state in Eastern Europe. The supreme sovereign was the Khagan, the high priest, but the actual ruler was the vice regent or assistant Khagan. The Khaganate's first capital was Samandar or Samandar in northern Dagestan in the mid-8th century. Under pressure from the Arabs to the south, the capital was transferred to Atil on the Volga River near present-day Astragan. Atil became an important trade center between east and west. In 835 AD, the fortified city of Sarkel was built on the Don River with the help of Byzantine craftsmen. Among its inhabitants were many Rus, Greek, Iranian, and Central Asian merchants. One thing that's interesting that I want to mention about the city Atil is how close it sounds to Attila, the mighty ruler in the Hunnic Empire. So I think that's something that also connects them back to the Hunnic origin. Let's read a little further. Let's see what else do we have. The Khazar Khaganate reached its zenith in the late 8th century when it gained control over Sub-Caucasia, the Sea of Azov steppe, and most of Eastern Europe up to the Dnieper River. The Proto-Ukrainian Severanians and Polinians paid tribute to the Khazars. The Khaganate dominated the trade route between the Far East and Byzantine, and between the Arabic Empire and the Slavic territories, and Scandinavia to the north. Until the mid-10th century, Khazar trade with these centers was interrupted only by intermediate wars between these same powers. Let's continue. At the beginning of the 8th century, Jews from Iran and Byzantine settled among the Khazars in northern Dagestan. Although some Khazars soon converted to Judaism, it was only at the beginning of the 9th century that Khagan Obadiah proclaimed non-Talmudic Judaism the state religion. Prior to that, in 735, Arabs had invaded the Khaganate and forced some members of the ruling class to adopt Islam. Meanwhile, Byzantine tried to convert the Khazars to Christianity. In 860 to 61, Saint Cyril conducted a mission among them and a metropoly with 7 eparchies, which was organized. The Khazars even played a role in spreading Christianity in the Kyivan Rus before its official conversion under Vladimir the Great. All of these faiths coexisted peacefully on Khazar territory. I want to make some comments on this paragraph when it says King Obadiah proclaimed non-Talmudic Judaism the state religion. This is a debatable topic, but it is possible you would end up having a split within the Khazar kingdom, because during this time you also had the invention of Karaite Judaism. And a lot of Karaites from Egypt will also be converting Khazars. And you would have a split. Some of these tribes are actually split and join the Magyars to make modern-day Hungary, the Kingdom of Hungary. And because of this, we're not sure if Obadiah was rabbinic. He could have been, because there's stories that he brought teachers in school. So he must have made Talmudic Judaism the state religion. And we'll go into that source that talks about him bringing scholars and building synagogues. But he must have made Talmudic Judaism the state religion. And Crimean Karems would move to Crimea to separate. And you also have the Avars who wanted to separate because they were probably Karaites, or just didn't want to follow the king's rule or authority over their Judaism. Maybe they had a mix of Tengri Judaism, which is a more Turkic form of Judaism. And then you would also have the other religions within the Khazar Empire as well, peacefully co-religion, peacefully living amongst each other. We even see sources say that there were judges set up, 2 for Jews, 2 for Christians, 2 for Muslims, and I think 1 for the pagans. So this is also a kingdom that we can look at to study its tolerance and how a ruling class was able to let people coexist with different beliefs, but still hold firm to their beliefs, even making it the official religion and culture of the people. Similar to what we see in Africa as well, like the Mali Empire. Let's keep reading. We're almost done with this. In the late 9th century, the Black Sea steppes that were under Khazar control were invaded by the Pechenegs, whose insistent raids on the Khaganate considerably weakened the Khazar state. From the late 9th century, Kyivan Rus also emerged as a major opponent. According to the chronicles, Azkod Indir's Varangian troops liberated Kyiv from the Khazars in 862. And in 883 to 85, Prince Ole freed the Polinians and the Severanians from Khazar rule. Prince Eor's army twice, in 913 to 914 and 943 to 944, marched through Khazarian territory to the Caspian Sea and brought back rich booty. In his 941 campaign against Byzantine, however, Ihor received support from the Khaganate, and there were Christian Khazars among his warriors. Some comments I want to make about this paragraph. We're going to go into it later on, but I also think that Varangians, who are the origins of the Rus people, they're said to come from Scandinavia and to be Vikings. I believe they could be Vikings, but they could also have some origin to the city Balanjar, as we see that it had a different name that's very close to Varangian, and is a port city where people had ships. So it's possible that Kyivan Rus people could have been a mixture of Turkic, Slavic, Vikings or pirates, to say, and that they traveled up the rivers like the Volga and traveled from like Swedish territories all the way to Byzantine territories in their raids. And as we see here, even got support from the Khaganate, where you would have Christian Khazars, but also Messianic Jewish Khazars as well. So let's continue reading. In 964 to 965, Prince Sviatoslav I Ihorovic, excuse me if I'm butchering these names, by the way, inflicted the final blow to the Khazar state. He destroyed Itil and Samender and annexed Sarkil in the northwestern part of Khazar territory to the Kyivan Rus. This is the Tumortokan Principality. And we'll talk more about that in the future when we talk about what happened to the Khazars after the Rus took over their territory. This action proved to be detrimental to Rus, which became vulnerable to constant nomadic evasions from the east. In 985, Vladimir the Great defeated the Volga Bulgars, the brothers to the Khazars, and the Khazars, and forced them to pay tribute. The Khazars are last mentioned in the chronicles under the year 1079, when they conspired to seize Prince Ole, Sviatoslav, and Tomortokan, and hand him over to the Byzantine emperor after the fall of the Khaganate. The Khazars gradually intermixed with the Turkic and Cuman populations and disappeared as a distinct people. Of course, that's what my channel will be dedicated to, showing some of these other groups, because they have survived as some other people, such as Crimean, Karaites, Krimchaks people, but they did mix into Kimchaks, Cumans, and other Turkic people, but also mixed into the Rus as well. We see Khazars going into the court of the Rus, even a Khazar Jew trying to convert the king of the Rus to Judaism before he converted to Christianity. So with that, this is just the article, an encyclopedia of Ukraine. I figured this would be a good intro, talking about Khazars, before we get into some of our other topics. Be blessed, like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more. Shalom.